The emergency alarm screamed through the crystal corridors of the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council's headquarters. Ambassador Lee Minho straightened his dark blue Earth diplomatic uniform, his hands trembling slightly, as he walked toward the main assembly hall. In his 15 years representing humanity among the stars, he had witnessed heated debates, trade disputes, and even minor conflicts between species. But this was different. This was pure terror. The enormous circular chamber stretched before him like a vast stadium, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the swirling nebula outside. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of different worlds filled the floating platforms that orbited the central speaking area. But instead of the usual orderly discussions, chaos reigned supreme. The Vorthak delegates, beings of pure crackling energy contained within specialized magnetic fields, flickered wildly in their containment units. Their usual steady glow now pulsed erratically, like lightning trapped in glass bottles. Minho had learned to read their emotional states through their energy patterns, and what he saw now made his stomach clench with dread. Even more disturbing was the sight of the Draxian Imperium's War Council. These were the galaxy's most feared warriors, standing nearly 3 meters tall with armored exoskeletons that could deflect plasma cannon fire. They had conquered over 1,000 worlds through sheer military might, yet now they sat in their floating platform in complete silence, their usually aggressive postures replaced by something Minho had never seen before: defeat. Order! Order! In the chamber. The mechanical voice of the Council's AI moderator boomed across the hall, but barely anyone paid attention. Delegates were frantically typing messages on their quantum communicators, sending urgent reports back to their home systems. Chancellor Vextar of the Centaurian Federation finally managed to activate the central holographic display. The three-dimensional map of the galaxy materialized above them, slowly rotating to show the outer rim territories. Where once thousands of bright dots had marked inhabited star systems, now vast sections showed only ominous red warning zones. 17 complete star systems have gone dark in the past solar cycle, Vextar announced, his 6 insectoid eyes darting nervously around the chamber. His translator device struggled to convert his clicking speech patterns into the standard galactic language. The Kepler sector, the outer helix colonies, even the ancient Zephyrian homeworld, all silent. No distress signals, no emergency beacons, no final transmissions. They're simply gone. Minho leaned forward in his seat, studying the holographic display with growing horror. Each red zone represented billions of lives, some from civilizations that had existed long before humans had even discovered fire. The Zephyrians alone had been spacefaring for over 50,000 years, with technology that made Earth's most advanced systems look like stone tools. "How is that possible?" called out Ambassador Krelthor from the Aquatic Confederation, his breathing apparatus bubbling as he spoke from his water-filled environmental suit. The Zephyrians had planetary defense grids that could stop asteroid impacts. Their shields could withstand direct hits from stellar flares. "We're initiating immediate evacuation protocols," High Commander Zilthanor of the Epsilon Collective declared, rising from his platform. The tall, grey-skinned being's usually calm demeanor had cracked, revealing the fear beneath. "All outer colonies are to be abandoned immediately. We're pulling back to the deep core systems until this threat passes." The word threat hung in the air like a poison cloud. Minho stood up, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter that had erupted across the chamber. "With respect, High Commander, what exactly are we dealing with here? You're talking about abandoning entire sectors of space, but no one has explained what we're running from." A hush fell over the assembly as all eyes turned toward the center of the chamber. The air itself seemed to shimmer and bend, and slowly a figure began to materialize. The entity known as Whisper of Ages was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy, a creature of such ancient power that most species considered it more legend than reality. Its form was barely visible, a shifting outline of translucent energy that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, carrying the weight of countless eons. "The Devourers stir from their eternal sleep, young human," it said, and despite the translator systems, Minho could hear the raw fear in its otherworldly tone. "We have faced them before in the galaxy's youth, when the first stars were still burning bright and new. They are not mere predators or conquerors. They are hunger itself, given form." The chamber fell deathly quiet. Even the emergency alarms seemed to fade into background whispers. "They consume everything they encounter," Whisper of Ages continued. "Matter becomes fuel for their endless appetite. Energy feeds their growth. Even space and time itself bends and breaks under their influence. Where they pass, nothing remains. Not debris, not radiation, not even the memory of what once was. There is no weapon that can harm them, no defense that can stop them. There is only distance and the hope that they will eventually return to their slumber." One by one, the various species began announcing their withdrawal. The proud hegemony of suns, masters of stellar engineering, declared they were moving their entire civilization to mobile space habitats. The Crystal Collective, beings who lived within the heart of asteroids, began preparations to launch their worlds toward the galactic center. Minho watched in stunned amazement as the greatest powers in known space, civilizations that had seemed godlike to humanity just decades ago, prepared to flee like frightened children. The weight of cosmic insignificance pressed down on him as he realized that if these ancient, powerful beings were running in terror, what possible hope did humanity have against such a threat? The emergency session dissolved into chaos as delegates rushed to contact their homeworlds and begin the largest evacuation in galactic history. Captain Park Jae-hyun pressed his palms against the armrests of his command chair, feeling the familiar vibration of the UES Defiance's engines humming beneath him. The bridge was unusually quiet for what should have been a routine patrol mission. Through the main viewport, the Kepler Nebula stretched out like a rainbow-colored cloud of gas and cosmic dust, beautiful and serene. But today, something felt terribly wrong. The mixed fleet of 12 ships had been assembled hastily after the Emergency Galactic Council session. 5 human vessels worked alongside 4 Vorthak energy cruisers and 3 crystalline ships from the Epsilon Collective. It was supposed to be a show of unity, a joint investigation into the mysterious disappearances at the galaxy's edge. Instead, it had become humanity's first real encounter with the unknown terror that had sent entire civilizations fleeing. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Vorthak flagship," Lieutenant Kim So-hyun called out from her communications station, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The young officer had volunteered for this mission, despite knowing the risks, like so many others aboard the human ships. Jae-hyun nodded toward the main screen as the flickering form of Commander Velthara materialized. The Vorthak being's energy field was pulsing erratically, shifting from its usual steady blue glow to rapid bursts of yellow and orange. Colors that their xenobiology expert had taught them indicated extreme distress. "Human Captain," the alien's voice crackled through the universal translator, distortion making it sound hollow and distant. "Our deep sensors are detecting massive gravitational anomalies ahead. We strongly recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance." "Commander, we need to get closer to gather reconnaissance data," Jae-hyun replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Earth Command needs to know what we're dealing with." The Vorthak's energy form flickered more violently. "Captain Park, you do not understand. These signatures, and we have encountered them before in the ancient archives. Our ancestors fought them eons ago and barely survived. We will not face them again." Before Jae-hyun could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the bridge. The tactical display showed the Allied ships one by one powering down their weapons systems and charging their jump drives. "Sir, the Epsilon Collective vessels are also requesting immediate withdrawal," reported Ensign Cho Min-jae from the sensor station, his voice cracking slightly. "They're saying something about hunger that devours reality itself." On the main screen, Commander Velthara's form was now barely visible, fluctuating wildly between different energy states. "Forgive us, humans. We have families, worlds to protect. We cannot lose our ships to this abomination. May your ancestors guide you to safety." The transmission cut off, and within seconds, brilliant flashes of light erupted around the human fleet as their alien allies jumped to hyperspace. The Vorthak ships simply vanished in bursts of pure energy, while the crystalline vessels of the Epsilon Collective folded space around themselves and disappeared like mirages in the desert. "Well, that's just great," muttered Commander Lee Do-yun from the weapons station. "Looks like we're on our own out here." Jae-hyun stared at the empty space, where moments before a dozen alien warships had flanked his small human flotilla. Now only 5 human vessels remained: the destroyer UES Defiance, 2 frigates, a science vessel, and a supply ship that probably shouldn't have been anywhere near a potential combat zone. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple contacts on long-range sensors," Ensign Cho called out, his hands trembling as he worked his controls. "Bearing 27 Mark IV, approaching at sublight speed. The readings are impossible, sir. The mass. Signatures don't make sense." "Put it on the main screen," Jae-hyun ordered. The forward display shifted to show the deep space scanner results, and what appeared made every person on the bridge fall silent. Emerging from the colorful gases of the Kepler Nebula came shapes that defied human understanding. They weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were vast constructs of twisted metal and dark energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around them. Dr. Han Yuna, the fleet's chief science officer, stumbled backward from her station, her face pale as she stared at the readings. "Captain, those things are generating gravitational fields that shouldn't be possible. They're warping space-time itself just by existing." The creatures, for lack of a better word, moved with purpose through the cosmic gas clouds. As they passed, near distant stars, something horrifying happened. The stars didn't explode or collapse, they simply stopped existing. One moment there was a burning ball of nuclear fire that had shined for billions of years, and the next moment there was nothing. Not darkness, not empty space, but absolute nothingness that expanded outward like a growing bubble of void. "Those aren't ships," Dr. Yuna whispered, her scientific training warring with the impossible data streaming across her screens. "They're eating the universe itself. Matter, energy, space, time. They're consuming everything." The largest of the constructs suddenly changed direction, turning what might have been its attention toward the small human fleet. A tendril of absolute darkness reached out across the void, moving faster than anything that size should have been able to move. "Evasive maneuvers," Jae-hyun shouted, but it was too late. The tendril touched the UES Courageous, one of their escort frigates. The ship didn't explode in a ball of fire or break apart under stress. It simply ceased to exist. No debris, no energy discharge, no final transmission. 1 second it was there with 200 crew members, and the next second it was as if it had never been built, never been launched, never been crewed by brave men and women from Earth. "Emergency jump, all ships!" Jae-hyun's voice cracked as he gave the order. "Get us out of here now." The bridge lights dimmed as the Defiance's jump. Drive spun up to full power. Through the viewport, Jae-hyun could see more of the impossible constructs emerging from the nebula, their dark tendrils reaching out hungrily toward anything that existed. "Jump drive ready, Captain," called out the navigation officer. "Execute." Reality twisted and folded around them as the human ships leaped into hyperspace. In the brief moment before the jump completed, Jae-hyun caught one final glimpse of the Devourers, spreading their endless hunger across the cosmos, turning star systems into expanding spheres of nothingness. As the ships emerged from hyperspace, hours later at the rally point, the surviving crews sat in stunned silence. They had seen why every advanced civilization in the galaxy was running in terror. They had witnessed hunger itself given form. Beings that didn't just destroy worlds, they erased them from existence entirely. The universe suddenly felt much smaller and much more fragile than anyone had ever imagined. The massive conference. Room deep beneath the lunar surface buzzed with tension as Earth's most powerful leaders gathered around the circular holographic table. President Kim Tae-hyung rubbed his tired eyes, the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders like a mountain. For 18 straight hours, they had debated, argued, and analyzed every possible option. Coffee cups and empty food. Containers littered the table, evidence of the marathon session that would determine their species' fate. The holographic displays showed the grim reality facing Earth. Refugee ships from dozens of alien civilizations streamed past human space, fleeing toward the galactic core. Even the mighty Draxian war fleets, feared across 1,000 worlds, had joined the exodus. The message was clear: run or die. The evacuation preparations are complete, Admiral Yang Hyejin reported from her command center on Mars, her image flickering slightly in the holographic projection. Dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept either. We have enough transport ships to move the core population, about 2 billion people, to the Centaurus colonies within 6 months. The industrial facilities can be relocated within a year. Around the table, the faces of Earth's leaders reflected the gravity of the moment. They were discussing abandoning their home, the blue marble that had nurtured humanity for millions of years. The very idea felt like tearing out their hearts. General Lee Donghyuk suddenly slammed his fist on the metal table, making everyone jump. The sound echoed through the underground chamber like a gunshot. "And abandon Earth, our home." His voice cracked with emotion. Every other species in this galaxy ran with their tails between their legs the moment they heard whispers of these devourers. Are we really going to do the same? "General, be reasonable," said Finance Minister Park Ji-soo, her calm voice contrasting with his outburst. The reports from Captain Park's fleet were clear. These things don't just destroy, they erase everything from existence. What can we possibly do against entities that eat reality itself? "We fight," the general replied simply. "Someone has to draw the line somewhere, or these monsters will eventually consume everything, including those safe core worlds everyone's running to." President Kim stood slowly, his decision already made, but knowing it would change everything. "Contact the Galactic Council, set up an emergency transmission." Within minutes, the familiar faces of alien delegates appeared on the massive screens surrounding the conference room. But now, instead of speaking from the Grand Council chambers, most were transmitting from bunkers and hidden facilities deep within their core territories. The proud Chancellor Vextar was calling in from what looked like an underground military command center, his 6 eyes darting nervously, even in his supposedly safe location. Ambassador Lee Min-ho stepped forward, straightening his diplomatic uniform one last time. "Honorable allies and friends of humanity," he began, his words being translated instantly into dozens of alien languages. "Earth's government has reached a decision regarding the Devourer threat." The alien delegates leaned forward, expecting to hear humanity's evacuation timeline and requests for refugee assistance. "We're not running." The reaction was immediate and explosive. The Vorthak delegates' energy fields flickered wildly in shock. The crystalline beings of the Epsilon Collective created harmonic frequencies that sounded like breaking glass. "Chancellor." Vextar's 6 eyes went wide, and his mandibles clicked rapidly in disbelief. "Impossible," he declared, his translator struggling with his rapid speech patterns. "Young species, you do not understand what you face. These are not mere predators or invaders. They are the ending of all things given form." President Kim stepped into view of the cameras, his voice calm but filled with steel determination. "We understand perfectly what we're facing, Chancellor. We've seen the reports. We know what happened to the Outer Rim colonies. But someone has to make a stand, because if these devourers consume everything in their path, eventually they'll reach your core worlds too." But how? The question came from High Commander Zilthanor, his usually composed grey features showing genuine confusion. "Every civilization that has encountered them has fled or been consumed. There is no weapon, no strategy, no defense that can stop them." Dr. Park Seojin stepped forward, clutching a glowing tablet filled with data recovered from the destroyed patrol ship. The young scientist had barely slept since the fleet's return, working frantically to find some weakness in the seemingly invincible enemy. "We've been analyzing the quantum signatures left behind when the UES Courageous was destroyed," she explained, her fingers dancing across the holographic display to show complex mathematical models. "These devourer entities require perfectly stable spacetime to function at full efficiency. Their consumption process breaks down when faced with quantum uncertainty and chaos." The ancient ethereal known as Whisper of Ages slowly materialized. In the center of the transmission, its barely visible form shimmering with concern. "You speak of weaponizing chaos itself, young humans. Such methods are dangerous beyond measure, unpredictable. They could destroy you as easily as your enemies. General Lee stepped forward with a grim smile that had no humor in it. Unpredictable is what humans do best. While other species spend centuries perfecting their technologies and following precise plans, we've always thrived on chaos, adaptation, and impossible odds. "You're talking about suicide," protested Ambassador Krelthor from his underwater bunker, bubbles rising in his breathing apparatus. "No species has ever successfully fought the Devourers. No species has ever tried, President," Kim replied quietly. "Everyone always runs. Maybe it's time someone stood their ground." The transmission ended with the alien delegates in stunned silence, unable to comprehend humanity's decision. As the screens went dark, the human leaders looked at each other with a mixture of terror and determination. Within hours, the largest military mobilization in human history began. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels were retooled to construct warships. Scientists who had been working on peaceful exploration technologies were reassigned to weapons research. Every human military installation from Earth to the outer colonies received the same orders: prepare for war against the impossible. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Young pilots who had dreamed of exploring distant stars now trained to fight entities that consumed reality itself. Engineers worked around the clock to build weapons based on Dr. Park's quantum uncertainty theories. The industrial might of humanity, spread across dozens of star systems, focused on a single goal. They would not run. They would not hide. When the Devourers came for Earth, humanity would be waiting. The galaxy watched in amazement and horror as the youngest spacefaring species prepared to do what no civilization had ever attempted: stand and fight against the ending of all things. Admiral Choi Min-soo stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, his hands gripping the command rail as he stared at the tactical display. The massive dreadnought hummed with power around him, its experimental weapon systems charging for the first time in actual combat. Through the armored viewport, the Proxima Gate stretched across space like a glittering metal web, humanity's first line of defense and possibly their last stand. "Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up gravitational distortions," reported Lieutenant Commander Kim Ji-soo from her station. "3 massive contacts approaching from the outer system. Estimated arrival in 47 minutes. The bridge." Fell silent except for the steady beeping of the ship's systems. Every person present knew what those contacts meant. After weeks of preparation, the Devourers had finally arrived at humanity's doorstep. "Signal the fleet," Min-soo ordered, his voice calm despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. "All ships to battle stations. This is what we've trained for." Around him, 36 human warships took their positions in a defensive formation that had never been tested against an enemy like this. The fleet was a mix of everything humanity could muster: retrofitted colony ships turned into mobile weapons platforms, sleek destroyers bristling with quantum disruption cannons, and experimental vessels built specifically to fight beings that consumed reality itself. Dr. Han Minwoo rushed onto the bridge, his white lab coat still stained with coffee from the frantic final preparations. "Admiral, the quantum uncertainty generators are online, but we've never tested them at this scale. The theoretical models suggest they should work, but we won't know until we try," Min-soo finished for him. "Doctor, your chaos weapons are our only hope. Everything depends on them working." The scientist nodded nervously and took his position at the specialized tactical station they'd installed just for this battle. His hands shook slightly as he began the startup sequence for weapons that violated every known law of physics. "Contact!" The shout came from Ensign Park Hyunju at the sensor station. Visual contact established. The main screen flickered to life, and even though they'd seen the recordings from Captain Park's encounter, nothing could have prepared them for seeing the Devourers in person. 3 massive constructs emerged from the darkness between stars, each one larger than Earth's moon. They weren't built. They had grown like living tumors of twisted metal and dark energy that hurt to look at directly. Where they moved, space itself seemed to flinch away from them. Stars in the distance flickered and dimmed as the creatures' presence warped the very fabric of reality. The leading construct extended what might have been sensors toward the human fleet, and several officers on the bridge suddenly felt sick to their stomachs. "They're scanning us," whispered Commander Ojihun from the weapons station. "I can feel them looking at us. It's like they're trying to decide which flavor we are." "All ships, hold formation," Minsu broadcast to the fleet. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them outright. We just need to prove they can be hurt." The Devourers continued their approach, moving with the patience of entities that had existed since the galaxy's youth. As they drew closer, their true horror became apparent. These weren't machines or even living creatures in any sense that humans could understand. They were appetite given form, hunger that had learned to think and move and consume everything in its path. "Range to target, 800,000 kilometers and closing," reported the tactical officer. "Gravitational distortions are increasing. I'm reading space-time fractures forming around their positions. Pattern delta formation," Admiral Minsu ordered. "All ships, prepare to engage with synchronized firing solution." Across the human fleet, exotic weapons systems that had existed only in theory until weeks ago came online. Gravitational disruptors that could create miniature black holes began charging their capacitors. Quantum uncertainty mines armed themselves with paradox generators. Reality itself was about to become a weapon. "Admiral, the lead construct is extending some kind of appendage toward us," called out the sensor operator. "It's moving faster than our ships can dodge." "Now!" Minsu shouted. "All ships, fire!" What happened next would be recorded in the annals of galactic history as the moment the impossible became reality. The human fleet unleashed controlled chaos across the battlefield. Black holes sparked into existence and collapsed in microseconds, creating gravitational waves that rippled through space-time. Quantum fields spread outward like invisible nets, making the very concept of existence uncertain in their wake. Space-time tiers opened and closed randomly, creating areas where the laws of physics simply stopped working. Reality became fluid, uncertain, chaotic. Everything the Devourers ordered, consuming nature couldn't process, and for the first time in eons, a Devourer screamed. The sound wasn't heard through space. It was felt directly in the minds of every human in the fleet. A wail of confusion and pain from a being that had never experienced either emotion before. The lead construct writhed as paradoxes tore at its structure, its perfectly ordered consumption field flickering and failing as it tried to process contradictory information. "Direct hit!" Commander O shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief. "The quantum uncertainty field is disrupting its matter absorption matrix. It's actually hurt." The wounded Devourer flailed wildly, its dark tendrils lashing out at random. Where they struck human ships, the vessels simply ceased to exist. The UES Courage, the UES Defiant, 12 ships and their crews erased from reality in moments of panic and pain. But the creature was no longer the perfect predator it had been. It was confused, damaged, vulnerable. "Keep firing," Minsu ordered. "Hit them while they're disrupted." The remaining human ships poured everything they had into the chaotic weapons barrage. More quantum uncertainty fields spread across the battlefield. More space-time tears opened and closed. More gravitational anomalies spawned and died in the span of heartbeats. The two undamaged Devourers suddenly stopped their advance. For creatures that had consumed galaxies, this was impossible. Their prey was fighting back. Their prey was hurting them. Then something unprecedented happened. The three constructs began to retreat. They pulled back slowly at first, then faster, as the human weapons continued to tear at the fabric of space around them. The wounded construct's screams echoed through subspace as it fled, followed by its companions, who had never before experienced anything other than absolute victory. As the Devourers disappeared into the darkness between stars, the surviving human ships floated in stunned silence. Half their fleet was gone, erased as if it had never existed, but they had done the impossible. They had made gods bleed. Within hours, recordings of the battle spread across the galaxy through quantum communication networks. On distant worlds where alien civilizations cowered in their deep bunkers, young voices began to whisper impossible thoughts. On the Vorthak homeworld, a young energy being named Kel'Thuzad flickered excitedly as he spoke to his clutchmates in their crystalline nursery. "Did you see? The humans made them run away. Perhaps there is another way than endless flight." In the deepest vaults of the Epsilon Collective, Ancient crystalline minds that had slumbered for millennia began to stir. Perhaps these chaotic, unpredictable humans offered something that ordered civilizations never could: hope. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Captain Lee Soo-young pressed her hand against the newly installed command console of the UES Defiance, feeling the alien technology humming beneath her fingers. The ship had been completely rebuilt after the Battle of Proxima Gate, now bristling with weapons and defenses donated by species who had once fled in terror. Crystalline energy cores from the Epsilon Collective powered gravitational disruptors designed by Vorthak engineers. Even salvaged pieces of Devourer technology, carefully studied and repurposed by human scientists, had been integrated into their most dangerous weapons. The bridge around her buzzed with activity as beings from dozens of different worlds worked. Side by side, a young Vorthak energy weaver named Zalketh flickered excitedly at the quantum mechanics station, his blue energy form dancing with anticipation. At the weapons console, a massive Draxian warrior called Thoknar checked his targeting systems with the methodical precision of his warrior race. Even a few reformed pirates and smugglers had joined the cause, bringing their knowledge of hidden routes through Devourer-controlled space. "Captain, final fleet status report coming in," announced Lieutenant Park Hyunji from her communication station. The young officer had volunteered to stay aboard, despite multiple offers to transfer to safer assignments. All 17 battle groups report ready across their assigned star systems. Soo-young nodded, looking at the massive holographic display. That showed the galaxy-spanning operation they were about to attempt. Never before in galactic history had so many different species worked together on such a scale. Over 2,000 ships from 43 different civilizations hung in space at carefully calculated positions throughout known space. "Dr. Kang Ji-won, status on the Chaos Protocol?" she called out to the brilliant scientist who had spent months figuring out how to turn the Devourer's own technology against them. The young woman looked up from her exotic instrument panel, her face pale but determined. "All quantum uncertainty generators are synchronized and ready, Captain. The paradox engines are showing green across all systems. We've never attempted anything on this scale before, but the theoretical models suggest it should work. Through the main viewport, Soo-young could see the heart of Devourer space, a region of twisted reality where normal physics had been warped beyond recognition. At its center lay their target, the Nexus, a construct so massive it made planets look like pebbles. It was the brain of the Devourer Collective, the central intelligence that had coordinated their hunger across the galaxy for millions of years. "Ma'am, we're receiving messages from the other battle groups," reported the communications officer. "Admiral Yang at the Centaurus position confirms ready. Commander Park at the Outer Rim checkpoint reports all systems go. The Vorthak energy squadrons at the Helix Nebula are charged and waiting for your signal." The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone aboard the ship. This wasn't just humanity's last stand. It was the galaxy's final chance. If the Chaos Protocol failed, there would be nowhere left to run. "Open a channel to all ships," Soo-young ordered, standing up from her command chair. Her words would be transmitted simultaneously to every vessel in the massive fleet, translated into dozens of languages for the alien crews who had chosen to stand with humanity. "Warriors of all worlds, defenders of life itself," she began, her voice carrying across space to reach beings she had never met, but who shared the same desperate hope. "Today we do something that has never been attempted in the history of the galaxy. We stand together against the darkness that has consumed countless civilizations before us." On ships scattered across 17 star systems, crews of humans, Vorthak, Draxians, Epsilon Collective, crystalline beings, and dozens of other species listened to her words. Young aliens who had grown up hearing stories of the unstoppable Devourers, now prepared to prove those stories wrong. For every species that ever lived, for every world that deserves to see tomorrow, for every child who should grow up free from fear, execute the Chaos Protocol. What happened next would be remembered as the most beautiful and terrifying moment in galactic history. Across 17 star systems, human-led fleets activated their quantum uncertainty weapons simultaneously. Reality itself became fluid as controlled chaos spread through space. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The Nexus, a construct of perfect order that had existed since the galaxy's youth, suddenly found itself surrounded by paradoxes it couldn't process. Space-time tiers opened randomly around its massive structure. Gravitational fields reversed direction without warning. The very concept of existence became uncertain within the quantum storm. For the first time in eons, the ancient intelligence that controlled the Devourers experienced something it had never known: confusion. Its attempts to adapt to the chaotic environment only made things worse, as each solution it tried created new contradictions that fed back into the system. The Nexus began to scream, not with sound, but with gravitational waves that rippled through subspace. Across the galaxy, every Devourer construct suddenly stopped moving as their central coordination failed. Ancient machines that had consumed entire star systems simply froze in place, their programming unable to cope with true randomness. "It's working," Dr. Kang shouted over the noise of alarms and excited alien chatter. "The paradox cascade is spreading through their network. They can't process infinite contradictions." On the main screen, they watched as the massive Nexus began to collapse in on itself, its perfect geometric structure crumbling as it tried to exist in multiple contradictory states simultaneously. Pieces of the construct phased in and out of reality before finally dissolving into quantum foam. As the central intelligence died, Devourer machines across the galaxy began shutting down one by one. Some simply stopped moving and became lifeless, metal hulks. Others collapsed into their own dimensional distortions. A few tried to continue their consumption patterns, but found themselves trapped in endless loops, repeatedly attempting to devour the same piece of space-time forever. Then something miraculous began to happen. In the dead zones where the Devourers had fed, where nothing had existed for eons, stars began to shine again. Space-time slowly healed itself, filling the voids with new matter and energy. Worlds that had been erased from existence flickered back into reality as the universe repaired the damage. The galaxy held its breath as the last Devourer construct finally went silent, its hunger extinguished forever. Months later, Ambassador Lee Minho stood before a reformed Galactic Council in chambers that had been rebuilt and expanded to accommodate the new alliance of species. Representatives from worlds that had hidden in the deep core for millennia now sat alongside the humans who had taught them courage. "Today we learned that running isn't always the answer," he said to the assembled delegates, his words being recorded for history. "Sometimes you have to stand your ground and embrace the chaos. Sometimes the youngest voice in the room has the right idea, even when all the ancient wisdom says it's impossible." Young Vorthak energy weavers flickered proudly in their containment fields. Draxian warriors who had rediscovered honor in fighting alongside humans stood tall in their ceremonial armor. Even the ancient ethereals had emerged from their hiding places to witness this new age. The galaxy would remember that when every species ran from the infinite hunger, humanity chose to fight. And in teaching others to stand their ground, they had saved not just themselves but everyone. The age of endless flight was over. The age of hope had begun. The end.